Welcome to The Drive with your automotive experts and hosts, Lauren Fix and Karl Brauer. Each week we dive into breaking car news, share our latest vehicle reviews, and bring you up to speed on what's happening in the automotive world. Buckle up and hit the road with us. This is The Drive.
This is The Drive with Lauren and Karl, and this is a very special episode as we are airing on July 4th weekend, and we want to celebrate the America's 250 years we have been a country, and so much has happened. But since Karl and I focus on automotive, we really want to focus on some real exciting things that have happened in the automotive industry that have impacted you on a daily basis. Karl, I'm sure you're just as excited and passionate about this. You have a whole history with America and your family, and just real exciting news from your end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, is it too kludgy to say a quarter of a millennium? Anyways, 250 years is a nice round figure to have hit as a country, and I think you and I are both incredibly proud of this country and happy to celebrate its quarter of a millennium, its 250th birthday. I know there's some people out there who maybe aren't as happy about the country, and I kind of wish those people would leave, but let's not get into that. So, there is a love it or leave it attitude that, like most cliches, they don't materialize out of thin air. They come from somewhere, and I'm a big fan of that one. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about American car history specifically, because that's what the show specializes in. And the car has had such an incredibly large influence, as you know, Lauren, on this country over the past 250 years. Maybe not as much the first, 100 years or so, but 110 years after we established the country in 1886 was a Benz Patent-Motorwagen that was essentially patented as the first official automobile. It was the first, and there were things running around. You go back to historians, that wasn't the first car. That was the car that was patented as a horseless carriage. It moved humans around without needing horses to do it, and used four wheels and like a steering controller.
It was 1886, right?
1886, and that was essentially the precursor to the Benz Patent-Wagen. Yes, the same Benz that became eventually Daimler-Benz and Mercedes-Benz and all of that. And I was actually able to drive one very briefly, not one of the original ones. A lot of people say there might be one original one left. Most of them were long gone because nobody thought they'd be worth anything. They threw them away when they were obsolete. But Mercedes was smart enough and wise enough to create basically a replica. They had all the information to create one. And they actually had one at a press event in Los Angeles, right off Sunset Boulevard. And
you got to drive it on the streets?
I got to drive it on Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, driving the original car on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles is an experience.
Was it gas powered or battery powered?
No, it was gas. That was the thing. It was an internal combustion four-wheeled device that could carry humans and had like a steering and brake controller system and all. So it was really the first execution of what we consider.
How scary was that to drive?
It was a tad scary, but it was also a very unique experience, as you can imagine. So I was really glad that I got to do that. And while that car, of course, came from Germany, and it certainly started the automobile evolution, it really wasn't the car that put America on wheels, which anyone who's a historian will already know the vehicle I'm referring to. And I know you know, Lauren, but really the credit for that goes to Ford,
right.
and Henry Ford, who built the Model T. And the big deal with the Model T, which I believe was made between 1908 and 1927. So it was made for about 20 years, and they sold 15 million of them in those 20 years.
For one type of car, 15 million. There's no car that sells that much anymore. Of any.
No, I mean, no, I don't know.
Not even Camrys in total, or
Honda Civic, I mean, like the total history of like the Corolla globally, and the Volkswagen Beetle. There's some other multi-million, even tens of millions of cars that have been sold of a given single model. But that was pretty impressive, especially at that time frame. And the reason, of course, is because people could afford it. We're talking about affordability today, and it's an issue. And Henry Ford recognized that he's never going to make Ford car company successful if he can't produce these cars at a price that the average person can afford. Cars were not supposed to, in his opinion, cars were not supposed to be for the only wealthy. So
That's interesting.
he
And they were
he
all gas too. They weren't electric. There were
no, they
electric
were all
cars back then. There was companies like Baker, 1913 had electric cars. And even Carl Benz tried playing with batteries. That's why I asked you if it was it a battery powered car or
So
gas
did
powered.
Porsche. Porsche
Yeah.
had a battery powered car back then. And of course, there was steam too. And a lot of people are like,
Stanley Steamer. Yeah.
we've already tried the alternatives to fuel, which were steam and electricity, and they didn't work over 100 years ago. And a lot of people say still the same thing. As I like to say in my most sophisticated way, the problem is energy density. Oil's got the advantage. Or to put it mildly and maybe a little bluntly, oil blowed up real good. So, it's
I like it.
what it takes to get it out of the ground, turn it into fuel, and use it to blow up combustion chambers and drive a car is the most cost-effective way to make a car run versus all other technologies. That
Right.
might still change, but right now, as the price of electric cars continues to prove, they're either losing money if they're sold at a price that the average person can afford, or they're way too expensive compared to a gas car if they're sold at a price that makes the company profit. They still have a disadvantage, just like they did over 100 years ago.
Wow. And the technology, just think about when gas came out of the ground, black gold and how they converted
Yeah.
it, and gas stations have changed. And I mean, just amazing changes in how we affected how gas stations are placed and what they're used
Yeah.
for. And just everything, a lot of that came from here in
Yeah, the
America.
dealer franchise system, all of that stuff,
Yes.
was really born in America. So the car and America are so tied together. And really, it's a giant country, and everyone here loves the idea of freedom and personal liberty and do what I want to do and go where I want to go.
Mhm.
Without the car and the internal combustion engine, that wouldn't have been possible.
Sure. And
So,
it led to all kinds of inventions and all kinds of racing. And racing was the way you proved your car and so much more. And we're going to cover all that on the show today. We're going to talk about top 10 American iconic cars, of which you may or may not have owned one of. We're going to talk about racing. We're going to cover some inventions. And we're also going to talk about some women that invented some things that you use every day you may not even know about. And then in the end, we're going to cover the future. So stay right with us. And if you're not listening to us on YouTube or on our podcast, our YouTube channel is The Drive Car Show. Don't forget to download our podcast, subscribe so you get it every week. And of course, we'll be here on your local radio station as well. All right, we'll be right back after this break.
welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. And this segment is brought to you by IC Cars. That's where I'm the executive analyst and where you can see all the listings across the country for new and used cars if you're trying to buy your next automobile. And if you're trying to have some guidance on buying your next automobile, we've also got a ton of data that we provide on everything from vehicle lifespan, how long these used cars are going to keep going, what's the predicted lifespan of a brand new car, to which car color holds its value best if you're trying to decide between two colors. So that and a lot of other guidance on iccars.com. So we were just talking about American, vehicles and the importance of the automobile to U.S. history, Lauren, and it's huge.
Oh,
But
yeah.
one of the ways that, as you well know, because you're one too, one of the ways you vet a vehicle, one of the things you test and verify that a vehicle's got the durability to put up with consumers is you can race it and test it in endurance racing and in high speed circumstances where it's put under a lot of stress. And I think both of us are aware that one of the things that helped Ford Motor Company was that that car, one of his first cars, was in a race in 1903, and it won the race, and it
Right.
got a lot of publicity from that win, and that
It was
helped Ford
huge.
become, yeah, yeah.
Back
So
in the time,
racing
the
is huge.
government used to control who built cars, believe it or not.
Right.
A lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize that. So if you wanted to build a car, Carl and I wanted to build a car, we would have to apply to the federal government and we would have to prove it by racing, but we'd need a special license from the government as well. Good thing a lot of
Yeah.
that has changed.
Thankfully.
Yes.
But so racers have been very important for the history of the automobile in this country. And so we looked at what we consider to be the top 10 racers from America, specifically American racers, people born here and very successful in the racing industry. So we're going to run through that real quick.
Except for
Okay.
one. One wasn't born here, but he is a U.S. citizen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And he certainly is seen as very American.
Yes, that's for sure.
So Ken Miles, I am putting at the top of the list. I'm not going to do this in any fancy order. We're just going to go 1 to 10. So
Okay.
I put Ken Miles at the top. Anyone who's seen Ford versus Ferrari knows how important Ken was, how he was literally robbed of the Triple Crown of winning in 1 year the Sebring, 24 hours of Sebring, Daytona, and Le Mans. He won Sebring, he won Daytona in 1966, and he should have won Le Mans. He could have won Le Mans. He would have won Le Mans, but They tried to do a publicity stunt with all three cars crossing at the same time, and because they crossed in essentially the same time, and um, the Kiwi, the guy from McLaren, because Bruce McLaren was further back when they started. They said he traveled more distance in that 24 hours, so he got the win,
Right. He
and
got
Ken Miles
gypped, for
got
sure.
screwed. So he lost on that, and that was unfortunate. But I consider him certainly one of the most underappreciated American drivers, but also hugely important.
Right. And he did his
So
own work too. He would wrench on the car and then get in the car and drive it
yeah,
and
he
then
could do
work on the car
everything.
in between. I mean, he was the real deal.
Yeah, he was super talented. So, all right, we're gonna be quick because we don't have a lot of time to get through the rest. So we're gonna go quick.
Go for it.
So Dan Gurney we've got in here. He also won at Le Mans actually the next year, and his driving partner is another one on the list, AJ Foyt. Those guys won Le Mans the next year after Ken Miles in '67. Right. Phil Hill, very capable racer, and the first world champion, Formula One world champion from America
From
in the
America,
60s.
yeah.
So yeah,
And then,
so
of
that was a
course, you
big
got
deal.
Richard Petty, very famous NASCAR driver. And if you are a
The
NASCAR fan,
King.
the
The
King,
King.
still
Yeah,
around,
and he's still around. Gosh, I
yeah.
don't know what his age is, but he's still there.
Yep.
Then we have
Mario
Mario
Andretti.
Andretti. Yeah, another world champion, Formula One world champion. Not a lot of Americans have achieved that, or people who are associated with America, but Mario has done that.
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt. Now that's about as American as it gets, and
Yeah.
he, of course,
Left
was
us
big
too
in
early.
NASCAR.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Rick Mears, another very capable racer and who accomplished a
Four-time
lot.
IndyCar driver, 4 times. Not too
Yeah.
many people can say that. That's pretty historic. And Jeff Gordon, NASCAR, he's younger of the list, but Jeff
Yes.
Gordon's still around, still pushing the racing. I saw him at the Amelia Concours. And
Yeah.
David Pearson, who was a
Yes.
NASCAR driver, right?
Another NASCAR driver. These are the 10 that we put on the list. Happy to hear responses from anyone who has other racers to recommend in our comments section. But that's what we consider to be really the 10 most important American racers. We will take a quick break and be right back on the drive with Lauren and Karl.
Welcome back to the Drive with Lauren and Karl. This segment's brought to you by Classic Tube. If you're restoring a car or you'd like to keep your car longer and maybe you're having some problems with your brake lines or your fuel lines, check out classictube.com. Pre-bent brake lines made here in the USA. We make product all the way back from the 20s up to current production. So if you need a replacement brake line, fuel line, transmission line, or a special product, we can make that all for you. Check out classictube.com. Now, Karl, we've been talking about top 10 American, literally different things from race car drivers to where the automobile began. We're going to cover even more of this in the show. But one of the things that you and I were discussing before the show went live was top 10 American automotive innovations that the world is using because we created it here in the USA.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think a lot of people just take these for granted. They don't really think about it, but they're kind of important stuff. So
And
we're going
of
to
it
talk about
crosses over too to other products, for example.
exactly.
The first
Yeah,
one is used in a lot of different things.
right. And again, we talked about the Model T and how it put America on wheels. And the reason it put America on wheels is because it could be sold at a profit at an affordable rate, and because Henry Ford paid his workers enough and all to make it. I'm trying to remember, was it $5 a day? I want to say it was $5 a day. It was a
At the
lot of
time.
money in the early 1900s. And by making $5 a day, they could afford to buy the same vehicles they were working on because he did not want it to be seen as a wealthy person's only
Smart.
product. So how did he make the car so effectively and so high volume at such a low cost? Something we've all heard of, but was a big deal back then. It's called an assembly line. And he created the concept of let's line up all the parts that we need to assemble this complex thing, and let's have them ready at a certain position, and then line the chassis up and run it down the line with people at each station putting the thing together. And it
And
worked.
that
And they
technology is
produced,
still used today. And the
yeah,
original production line is still in the Henry Ford Museum. You can go see it.
yeah, it's still the basis for high volume production of complex things, especially bigger mechanical things.
Right.
So that was a big deal. Another one that none of us can probably even conceive what it would have been like without this was the electric starter.
Versus a
Lauren,
crank start. Back
can
in
you
the
imagine?
early ones.
Oh, man.
You could break your arm because it would snap
Yeah,
back.
right.
So most women weren't able to start a vehicle and they would
Yeah,
need someone else to help them start it. So when you think about that, that doesn't make it very open for the average person to be able to start this vehicle and own this vehicle. So what do? You create an
yeah,
electric
yeah.
starter. And that
Electric
was
starter with a
created here.
battery. That was
Yeah.
huge. Now, another big one that is so American, and I'm a huge fan, I think you are
Yes.
too, and that's
Yep.
called the V8 engine. And we were the first ones to put the V8 in again in, I think that was the 32 Ford, had the first V8
Flathead Ford. Yep.
yeah, flathead Ford, and it was a big deal. Fast, powerful, big deal. And another thing that relates to drivetrain that's similar to an engine is the automatic transmission, the ability for the transmission to shift itself, which again, a lot of people, we're in a world now where Lauren, they don't know what to do with that third pedal, so it's kind of depressing.
It's a great
But
security feature, by the way.
yeah, if you don't want your car stolen, get a manual.
Yep.
But automatic transmission, big deal, made the car again kind of like the electric starter, much easier for a wider range of people to drive.
Mhm.
What's another big one,
Well,
Lauren?
air conditioning. I mean, think about areas. If you're like if you're in my area, I live in Buffalo, New York. There were some hot days, and you're like, all right, I'll be fine. Put no windows because you just let the breeze go through. But if you live down in Atlanta or Florida or Southern California, the lower
Arizona. Oh,
there, oh, you need something to cool you off. And so they used to put like ice over a fan. I mean, a lot of interesting creations, but they created air conditioning, which now I don't even know if you can buy a car without AC.
and by the way, Lauren, didn't it? I'm probably wrong here, but I feel like didn't air conditioning almost like kind of hit cars first and then it transitioned to like refrigerators and stuff? Like I
Yeah,
feel
well,
like
it's almost parallel because remember there used to be an ice cube you would put in an ice box. Used to call
ice
it an ice
boxes,
box,
yeah, yeah.
right?
You had to put ice in to keep the ice box cool, and then the idea that there's a compressor and it's got this freon, I think might have started in the car, or at least simultaneously, like you said, for
Somewhere in
refrigerators.
that
But
same technology range. And now today, having an air conditioner in your home is not a normal thing, but if you have a newer home, it is. But
yeah,
to think about, the fact that cars were available without that, I mean, that's also true with like power steering. I mean, in order to
yeah,
steer a car like the one you drove, Carl, you got to be pretty strong. I mean, some of these racers had like leather helmets and they all had big arms. And in order to steer some of these cars, required some pretty
you had to be
beefy
pretty
dudes.
buff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to be pretty buff to consider these things. And another one that's made it become quite a convenience we all love is cruise control. Now we've got, of course, adaptive cruise control, smart cruise control. The thing will drive itself practically. It'll keep itself in the lane. But this was kind of the first level of like, they have that level 0 through 5
Yeah.
of self driving. Cruise control was the first one, and it was out, I believe, in the 1950s, right, or maybe even
Yeah.
earlier. But that's a
It wasn't
long
what it is
time.
today, but yes, there's
It was
certainly
very
been
basic,
an
but it
evolution.
technically would hold the gas pedal down at a speed that you wanted.
It was
Another
done by
big
a
one, much
vacuum bag. Yeah. Back in the
yeah,
day.
another big one that's much more recent is airbags.
Right.
Now, I believe it was like the 1970s, and I think it was a Buick
80s,
that had it.
1984, and a
80s, okay.
Lincoln, believe it or not, was the
Okay.
first. A Lincoln Continental. I don't know why I have that information in my head, but I do. Lincoln
Yeah.
Continental, and then later on, other vehicles, just like airbags became really interested, side impact airbags and all these things, because if you use them with seatbelts, it was the safest way to travel.
Yeah, yeah, and they wanted the airbag plus the seatbelt, so they got them all now.
Yep.
And then again, a much more recent one, and certainly an interesting one and a high-tech one, head-up display, which I think I believe started in airplanes because it was really
Yes.
helpful to not have to look down at your instrument cluster when you're traveling at those speeds. But now it's in cars, and it's just really it's another safety thing. You don't have to look away from the street to see what speed you're going or where to go turn next on your navigation even. And finally, the big one that we're in
This
the
is
middle of right
big.
now,
Yeah.
the EV transition. Okay, now I'm going to credit this to the U.S. even though it's going on everywhere now because it started really with Tesla. Tesla kind of was the Ford, Elon Musk, kind of the Henry Ford in terms of turning us from an internal combustion primarily country to potentially an EV country. We're not there yet. A lot of countries aren't there yet, but
We
that's
may
where we're
not be
headed.
there 100%, but it's good to know that the technology is there. We're going to take a quick
Yes.
break. We have more exciting things to cover. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Carl on this wonderful July 4th weekend. Happy birthday, America. 250 years. And part of some of the excitement that comes from the US is the fact that the automobile started for the most part from the US. Yes, I know Carl Benz created the first automobile in Germany, but for here in the US, cars have been a huge part of our culture. And Carl, you and I have some top you and I have some top 10 vehicles that are American made that you and I both love because we love cars like you love cars. And if you don't agree with our list, let us know what you think in the comments.
Yeah, this is the, no matter no matter which 10 vehicles, you're going to get people who are going to disagree. So
Oh
we're going
yeah,
to pick our 10 and happy to hear contrasting opinions. So,
there'll be
but
plenty, I'm
this,
sure.
and we'll just go in chronological order. It'll be very simple. So we've kind of already said this car a couple times because it was hugely important to both the car industry and specifically the American car industry. But the first one that's truly an iconic automobile from the US, the Ford Model T. Sold 15 million of them between 1908 and 1927. And it's utilized the assembly line. That's how they were able to produce so many and so many at a low cost so that Americans could afford them, so we could put America on wheels. You cannot have, we'll take feedback on these. Anyone who has a top 10 list of iconic American automobiles and doesn't have the Ford Model T on it
Yeah.
is probably not have a very good list. I'll just call you, what's the word I would use? I would probably use the word wrong. You're just wrong if you haven't got that on there. So
Yeah.
that's got to be on your list if you're coming up with that. Now, next is another Ford because it also had some stuff we've already talked about, and that's the 1932 Ford Model 18 or the Deuce with the V8 engine that came out in
Flathead Ford.
1932.
Yep.
Flathead Ford, huge. Again, now we've got some stuff again we've already referenced. The iconic and very American V8 engine that started here and available again in a high volume vehicle. And the performance it provided in 1932 was pretty amazing. And of course,
That was big.
that it was huge, Lauren. And that time frame and those cars were the basis for really the rod and custom movement that we all have seen, that really was, it preceded the muscle car era. Certainly it preceded, the import tuner era. The first era
Hot
of
rod scene.
aftermarket
Yeah.
tuning and hot rods was started because there was a V8 in a Ford in 1932. That's
Right.
what
And
started it
GM
all.
followed, Chrysler followed, all the
Yep.
big brands followed, and it set a pace on what performance was truly all about. The next one is,
Yeah.
if you've ever been to any of these beautiful car shows and the premium, or at a museum, you've probably seen a 1932 Duesenberg Model 5 or a Model SJ. Beautiful car.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, supercharged, incredibly powerful. One of the sexiest body styles you'll see, even by 2026 standards. I mean, they're just an amazing car from top to bottom and very big with the Hollywoodies. I mean,
Yeah.
that car
That
was
was.
like, that was like a Lamborghini or a Bugatti today. You bought one of those because you
Powerful.
wanted to show off how much money you had and you wanted to experience essentially the best performance that a car was capable of in 1932.
And they were all hand
So
built and they were all customized. So,
coach bodies and yeah,
yes,
very amazing
absolutely.
cars.
Yeah, and so the next
So
one is a classic. I would say anyone who's into cars, been to a car show, been to a cruise night, you've seen what I call the Tri-5s, the 55 to 57 Chevys.
yeah.
They're a huge iconic part of not just hot rod scene, but the car scene in general.
Well, that was again, there's a guy named Gray Baskerville, which you may know the name, but he was an editor at Hot Rod Magazine, and I started out as editorial assistant. And Gray had a great way to put this. He was like, the 32 Ford was the first V8, but it was flathead, which was cool, but not the great, the valves were sitting in the engine block and all, so it wasn't the most efficient flow of air.
Right.
The Bel Air in 55 came out with a V8, and it was the overhead cam V8. So that was basically like 1932 second stage, or
Right.
rerun. But now it's 1955, and it's
But
another
GM
high volume
took the
car.
lead. They took the lead.
Yeah,
They sold
high
tons of these. Two doors,
right
four doors, convertibles, hardtops. And my father had
wagons.
one at one point.
Yeah,
And they used to have a knob on the steering wheel. It was called a necker knob. So you could put your arm around your girlfriend. You could still drive the car with the
yeah.
knob
You
on the
could grab
steering
the
wheel.
steering wheel and turn it, with one hand, and then have
Yeah.
your arm around. Yeah.
Yep.
So a really important time frame for cars, but that the 50s was a lot of stuff. That's when we were getting power steering and air conditioning. A lot of innovation coming, but that 55 through 57 Chevy Bel Air and the Tri-5s, as you're saying, that was huge. A hugely important car to the U.S. And kind of a similar thing, certainly in a design
Big
time.
boat.
And
The next one.
it's again so American.
Yes.
59 Cadillac, the big
They're
fin.
huge.
They're just those big fins, and they got rockets hanging off the back because remember, this was during 1959. We got Sputnik, we got the space race with the Russians and all. So the cars of the 50s, you could come up with a lot of them. The Chrysler
They don't fit
300s
in
with
your everyday garage. My neighbor
no,
has
they're
one, and he has to get out of the car. This is like in today's garage with nothing in front of it. He has to walk down the garage door so it doesn't hit the back of the vehicle because the chrome bumpers were just huge.
yeah. Yeah, the Eldorado, the 59 Cadillac, it really represents kind of the pinnacle of maybe excess in American automobiles, but it's certainly iconic.
Then the pony
And
cars came. That was also huge.
yeah, well, then we got into sports cars, right? And
Sports
so I
cars
think the
and pony
next
cars,
one
yeah.
from a design was the 63 Chevrolet Corvette,
Right. That was
and
September 1963, came one way, white with a red interior and a six-cylinder engine.
well, that was 1953, right? That was the
60,
first year, 53,
well, 63, 53, right. And then the
right?
Corvette. And then
And
63 was the split window coupe.
split window, which is still in today's world. You look at it, and the
That is a
design is just
classic.
yeah, such a classic design. So the 53, and that was the big deal was now you had a V8, and I believe it was fuel, and you could get fuel injection. Yes, you could get
Yes.
63.
Yes.
You get so now you had it all come together. You had
Knockoff
the
wheels,
V8
side
engine.
pipes. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, you could get all sorts of crazy things, but 63's design is just timeless. It still looks beautiful
And the
today.
next one's on my favorite list.
Yes, what you know
Six,
about these, don't you?
yes, I do. 65 Mustang. We named our daughter Shelby. I am a Shelby enthusiast and an owner, but I will tell you, they made 650,000 cars in their first year because when they came out with this Mustang, they thought, we'll see what happens. It's a secretary's car, but they offered it six-cylinder V8, high-performance V8, convertible coupe, and fastback. And because there was so much to choose from, and they had to compete, they Corvette, they didn't realize that they created a whole section called pony cars, followed in 67 by the Camaro and the Firebird and other products. And so the Mustang still is one of the few vehicles today that it still has a huge following. There's no more Camaro, although we're hearing it's coming back. The Challenger is still here, and they're claiming it's going to have a Hemi. So that sort of brings us to the next car, one of your favorites, Karl.
Yeah. So if the Mustang kind of kicked off the pony car and was a big part of the muscle car era, the 1970/71, either one of those years, Hemi Cuda. That was again, if the Eldorado was the excess of the 50s, the Hemi Cudas were the excess of the muscle car era. These
True.
relatively small cars with 426 cubic inch hemispherical combustion chamber race engine
Big
V8s in
motor.
them. Yeah, just a crazy car, and the power to weight and the power to stability, that short wheelbase and all that. The
They're
cars were
still
just,
worth a ton of money. They go for
and they're
big
worth a
numbers
lot
at
of
the
money,
auctions.
and
Yeah.
they're fun to, they're tough to handle,
And I
but they're
kind of
fun to
wish I
drive.
could toss the Superbird in there too, because it was so iconic and unique.
I thought about that one. Now we're back to King Richard and the car he raced,
Yeah.
Richard Petty. But then we go a little further in the 70s, and this was the 77 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. And the reason I put that car
455
in there,
Super Duty with the big eagle, the Smokey and the Bandit.
well, that was 73 and 74. They had the Super Duty, and that's when they still had performance. They weren't very great performance cars by the late 70s because of emissions and stuff. But that car was the star of Smokey and the Bandit, as we know, and
Yeah.
it was. You don't get much more iconic now than the black and gold Firebird Trans Am with the cool front grille and those cool headlights going tearing down the road and Smoking the Bandit. And
Yep.
finally, a car that both of us have had
Yes.
fun with and experience with, the 2005 or 2006, same basic car, Ford GT. Just again, a throwback to the car that won at Le Mans and beat Ferrari, and just an amazing vehicle. And apparently the world's figured it out because the price on those has only been going one direction for the last
Yeah,
15
really.
years.
All right. Well, we're going to
All
take a
right.
quick break. We're going to come right back and go through another fun list. We'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl on our special America's Birthday 250 years old. And this segment is brought to you by Karl Brauer Cars. That's my YouTube channel where I'm putting up a couple videos a week on various vehicles. Maybe it's a Lamborghini Temerario, maybe it's a Chevrolet Bolt, maybe it's a Aston Martin DB12S, but there's
Nice.
a collection of, maybe it's even a Honda Moto Compacto, a little briefcase-sized scooter, which for some reason, Lauren, that thing's, I put that up over like a year or two ago, and now it's shooting back up and all. I don't know why, but
Because you have one.
so
That's why.
yeah, no, I bought one because I wanted to experience it. So, Karl Brauer Cars, check me out on YouTube. We've been talking about America because this is our big, as I like to say, quarter of a millennium birthday.
Yes.
And we're now going to talk about the role that women specifically have played in the automotive industry, and specifically the innovations that they've been a part of developing. Because a lot of people do not realize how much of a role a lot of these important innovations we now take for granted not just came from creative individuals, but creative women who had the foresight to see the use of these things. So,
Especially in
Lauren,
the 18 and 1900s where it was like not really acceptable.
Yeah, and it wasn't, I mean, some people would argue today the car industry is still more dominated by men than women, but certainly back in the time frame these were developed, it wasn't necessarily seen as a women's industry, and yet
Right.
women contribute a lot to it. So
Mhm.
why don't you start us out, Lauren, and tell us
Okay.
some of these?
Well, Carl Benz, you told me you drove the original car. Well, one day Carl Benz was out of town, and his wife Bertha and her two sons decided they were going to take the vehicle out of the garage without her husband knowing and take it for a spin. Sounds like something we would do. She took it for a spin, and it stopped not working. She couldn't stop the vehicle, so she took a belt and created the first brake pad. So she took some leather and made the first brake pads. Mind you, they weren't disc brakes; they were drum brakes. But there was a strap almost to start to slow the car down. So she created the first brake pad by using leather, which we're not using anything like that anymore. But it evolved into being able to stop the car, not just make it go. And then Margaret Wilcox created the internal car heater. She didn't want to be cold. A blanket on her lap was fine, but she took the heat from the engine and actually designed the first heater to bring heat into the cabin where you sat. That was, of course, something that there are no cars that don't have heaters today. And then Mary Anderson and Charlotte Bridgewood created the windshield wiper. Do you know what they used to do before that, Carl? They would get out of the
Uh,
car, take a rag,
and
and wipe it off, wipe off the windscreen. So what do you do when it's raining or
yeah, or snowing
snowing?
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they created the wiper blade. And originally, the wiper blade wasn't what it is today. It actually had like a rod that would go back and forth, and you would manually turn the rod left and right in order for that wiper blade to go back and forth. And of course, now they're automatic. But think about
Yeah.
some of the older cars you see at car shows, like early 1900s cars, you will see that design. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and then I see you've got on this list, you've got Florence Lawrence, great name, who
Yeah,
came up with the brake lights and the turn signals. So a
right.
lot of the exterior lighting we take for granted today, that's what she came up with. And a similar thing for in terms of visibility, instead of you being seen by others with brake lights and turn lights, it's you seen out of the car,
Right.
was Dorothy Levitt came up with the rear view mirror.
Right.
And it actually also had a racing element to it because people used to use the mirrors to help spot cars that were
Right.
coming up on them, but it helped lead to the mirrors we have in the consumer cars.
In
And then you have
1911, that was 1911. That was in the Marmot Wasp. And if you're ever in Indianapolis, go to the Indy 500 Museum and you will see that car with that rear view mirror.
the first rear view mirror.
Yeah, the
And
first
you
one
had
ever.
June McCarroll, who came up with road lane separators, like the traffic lines that kind of help us know where we're supposed to be on the road. Instead of just kind of, we'll just kind of sit over here on this side, probably will work, giving us an official place on the road that we're each supposed to be at, especially good on two-way roads with oncoming traffic.
Right.
And then who else you got? Catherine
Catherine
Blodgett.
Blodgett, she was an engineer
Yeah.
and a scientist, and she created non-reflective glass because before that it was clear glass and it was very dangerous, especially in the
Okay.
rain. And then Hedy Lamarr, who was a very famous actress, she came up with Bluetooth. She invented Bluetooth. So apparently she was a scientist, had worked for the federal government and created that. And then Gladys May West, she also worked for the U.S. Naval Weapons Laboratory, and she created GPS. So
Wow.
all the GPS you use today was created by a female. And then I had to add a couple interesting little tidbits. The first female who got a driver's license is a lady named Generva Delphine, I believe it is,
Delphine.
Mudge.
Delphine.
Yep,
Yeah.
New York, 1898. Earliest known woman to receive a driver's license.
Okay.
So that's
Wow.
pretty neat. And then
Pre 1900. That's pretty
yeah,
advanced.
because I mean, women drove back then. It wasn't like a rule one way or the other, and I'm sure you've heard otherwise. And then among other female firsts was the Duchess of France. In 1898, she was the first woman to receive a speeding ticket for, ready for this, going 9 miles an hour in a 7 mile per hour zone. I mean,
I
that's
love it. But
hysterical. I wonder how they
that's
got a
like,
collection on that.
it reminds me of like the comic bit where the guy's like driving through the parking lot and one of the, like campus security pulls him over and he's like, "Hey, the speed limit here is 5. Do you know how fast you were going? 6, 7. You were going 8. Oh,
Ooh.
okay. Which
It's amazing.
percentage wise, you're breaking the law by a big amount. And a good
Yeah,
argument.
you know what? That's true. That's true. There's a lot of interesting developments that have happened, and a lot of it we didn't get to cover. So, but we do have more to talk about, especially the future for the next 250 years when it comes to automotive. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back, and we have some more excitement. So, stay right with us. Welcome back to the Drive with Lauren and Karl as we celebrate 250 years for the United States of America. Happy birthday to all. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. And we wanted to let you know that this segment is brought to you by Car Coach Reports. That's my news channel. We talk about all the things we talk about here. Plus, we go into things you may not know about, such as kill switches, data collection, some of the new car technology coming out, and some things that may or may not make you happy, but it's good to know because knowledge is power. Check that out at Car Coach Reports, where we cut through the noise and give you the facts. Now, Karl, we've been talking about some history, but we also want to talk about the future because I think it's a big part of 250 years and our next 250 years.
Yeah, no, I think we've done a good job looking at what got us here. We need to look at where we're going from here. And the future of the automobile industry in the US is in an interesting point right now. I think we'd both agree, Lauren. We've got a lot of big transitions going on. Are we transitioning to electric cars? Some say yes. Some, I think the two of us on the screen right now or in your car radio
Yeah.
would say not necessarily, and certainly not as fast as some others are trying to predict.
Choices. I think you should have choices.
Choice is huge because I think that's the essence. Talk about American. I think that's the essence of America is
Freedom.
having freedom of choice.
Mhm.
Are we going self-driving so that it's going to be pointless? It's not going to matter how the cars are made and how fast they are, how well they steer, how
I
well
don't think we're there yet.
I don't think we're there yet either. And again, even if we get there where that's a possibility, it's a component of what you can do when you leave your house to go around. That doesn't mean you should have to. It doesn't mean you should have like no drive zones, which I know they're threatening to start to have now, where it's like, no, you're not allowed to take a car powered by a human or controlled by a human into that part of the city. I don't like the idea of that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what are we going to do about that five-letter word from the other side of the country, or the other side of the planet? What are we going to do about the Chinese onslaught that is kind of just completely riding over all the other car companies in countries that don't have the tariffs that we've got? And again, we've got tariffs that's keeping the Chinese from stampeding over our market share. A lot of people, why don't we compete with the Chinese? Because we're not communists that have no minimum wage and have.
They're coming in the back door. I've covered that on
Yeah.
my Car Coach Reports channel, where companies like Leap Motors, which is a Chinese car company, is partnering with Stellantis, and they're going to try and build here. They're going to try every way they can. And so before you think it's so great to bring in Chinese cars because of cost, keep in mind the quality is not there for what you not compared to like a Toyota or a Honda or other vehicles that are or a Hyundai that are being built here. But it also is going to hurt our economy and hurt jobs. So
Yeah.
it's always great to look beyond the tip of your nose, as we say.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And just because something costs less, sometimes it doesn't make it better. Sometimes even it means that it's actually worse. That's why it costs less. So,
Good point.
but certainly even if they have quality of equal to us, there's a lot of people on the planet. It's like, oh, we can't, we're humanists. We don't want any humans who are being mistreated on the planet. Well, maybe you should go tour the auto facilities over there in China and see how the
You'll
people
change your
making these.
mind.
Yeah, making these $20,000 cars and electric vehicles are being
Yeah.
treated as they build them and all. But
And they don't pay
whatever.
them much, but that's why we have the UAW here.
Yeah.
Also in Canada, they have a union. There's a lot of unions around the world to make sure you get a fair wage, that those that work in the auto industry can afford to buy the cars that they make, much like we talked about in the beginning, Henry Ford. Much
Yeah.
full circle here. Yep.
That's a good question, Lauren. How many of the people building the cars in China could buy those Chinese cars, even at the lower prices they're sold at? Maybe not a lot of them. So we're kind of going backwards if we broke out of that in the early 1900s with Henry Ford, and all of a sudden there's other parts of the world that aren't anywhere near there. That would be a bad mark on your record of kind of prosperity and how you treat your citizens. But
Right. And that's why they built the Volkswagen in Germany, same type of thing. That they wanted to make it so you could afford to buy the car. At the time they called it the people's car. And today what we're building here in the US is almost every brand has a place here, from Mercedes-Benz to Audi, BMW, largest employer in South Carolina. You've got Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, of course, Ford, GM, Stellantis, Tesla, builds a ton of cars here in the US for our market.
Yeah.
And so we want to keep the jobs here. We want you to be able to drive the cars that you want and that you love so that you can have your own car story.
yeah, that's 100% it. And so I think that's what we're all looking at and thinking about for the future. The car's been an integral part of this country's history and the level of freedom and choice that we feel like we have. And hopefully that will continue going forward.
Right.
So once again, happy birthday, America. Thank thank you for all you have provided us. I think Lauren and I are examples of people
Happy
who are very
birthday, America.
appreciative
Yes.
of
Happy
where we
birthday,
are.
USA. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this Celebrating America episode. We will be back next week with more from The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
You've been listening to The Drive, your trusted source for the latest car news, expert reviews, and real insights into the automotive world. Thanks for riding along with us today. You can check out the entire archive of every episode on our YouTube channel, The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and join the conversation by leaving your comments. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay safe, enjoy the ride, and we'll see you right back here on The Drive.